Excuse me. Well, it's a real honor to be back here, and I think everybody in here would agree that Kenmore in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, for a place to grow up, it was just magical. And I don't know that there's a better place in the country for this place at that time. But it's just memories that I'll cherish forever. I was trying to figure something appropriate, a way to start this out, and I'm thinking this might work. We'll see. So let's give it a shot and see.
That's what I did.
Well, that didn't come through as clear as I had hoped, but then the other one was this one. I'm going to start this one again. Okay. When I was like 8 to 10 years old, every time I heard those songs, it gave me chills. And 60 years later, it does exactly the same. Every time I hear Stand Up and Cheer across the field, I get chills because it brings back memories from pep rallies, football games, everything. So my wife had asked me, she said, how is it 50 years after the fact you can remember details about games? You know, scores, who did what? And she said, I send you up to the grocery store for 5 items and you come back with 4. I said, well, you know, recalling memories with my mind, I'm not so good. Recalling memories from my heart, I'll never forget. So, you know, these memories are in my heart, not my mind. So, I wanted to start here. At one point in everybody's lives, you've had show and tell, but you probably haven't done it since 2nd or 3rd grade. So I've had some things put away that bring back some wonderful memories. So this is Little League Baseball, Yankees. We won a couple league championships, so that's been in a drawer for 50 years. 1965. We won the state championship, Little League All-Stars. This is the South Akron Kiwanis jackets that we had for the state championship. When we were in Paynesville, where the state tournament was, one of the players, and I don't remember who, bought these hats, and it caught on, and the whole team bought them, and we're tooling around Paynesville with these, you know, for a few days. So we had an influencer somewhere. I don't remember who it was. This is the same design as the jacket, a state champion baseball hats. It's a junior varsity first football jersey. It's a nice quarterback number, isn't it? And then the following year in varsity, we had these. So it's another nice quarterback number. Then moving up to high school, I had kind of forgotten I had this, but after the first championship, we got these, city champs 1969. 1970 offensive playbook.
You never turned it in. That was you. We'll tell them what he ever went. Where's Coach McKinnon?
All right, Kenmore jersey. Now, you can't tell from where you're sitting, but there was a tear in this jersey, so contrary to popular belief, I did get hit. Not much, though, but we had a great offensive line that kept me from getting hit, but there is a tear in the jersey. I have proof. This is a jersey from the Liberty Bowl our sophomore year at NC State. So, and then Don and I each have one of these. This is a jersey from the Hula Bowl after our senior year in college. So I got to play in Honolulu, and then they took the same two teams from Honolulu, flew us over to Tokyo for a game in Japan. So this was for 22-year-olds, that's pretty cool getting to go spend a week in Honolulu and then a week in Tokyo, and it was wonderful memories. So. And then lastly, here's a game ball. My junior year at NC State, we're down 21-0 going into the fourth quarter against Virginia, and came back and beat them 22-21. So. All right. Don and I started playing Little League Baseball at 8 and football at 12. A lot of people have asked, how did you end up quarterback? Don end up receiver? Could that have ever been different? Could Don have played quarterback? We always did everything the same, and it's just happenstance or chance the way it turned out. The first year we went out for football, Coach Scarborough, first day of practice, said, all right, anybody who wants to be a quarterback, get in this line. Anybody who wants to be a running back, get in this line. Wide receiver is this line. So Don walked over to the quarterback line, and I was already in line. And he thought, well, we can't both play quarterback, so he stepped over to the wide receiver line. And that was it. It was all over. But during that year, we were playing Ellett, and they weren't very good. We were beating like 48-0. And a couple minutes to go in the game, the backup quarterback had sprained his wrist or something. So the coach grabbed Don and he said, I want you to go in at quarterback and just run quarterback sneaks until the clock runs out. So he said, okay. So we had the ball on our own 5-yard line. Don runs a quarterback sneak 95 yards for a touchdown. 1962, when we were 9 years old, the Kenmore All-Star Little League Baseball team, which is made up of 11 and 12-year-olds, so it was the older guys in our league, won the state championship. And the guys on that team, some of you may remember some of these. You got John Bridger, Jim Barlow, Tom Mix, Kenny Ash, George Fegis, Kenny and Mike Marchino, Carl Moreland, Dan Rector, Jack Shiflett, Dave Landis, John Petratus, Greg Wood, Mike Drummond, and Rick Long. So every practice, every game, we looked at that scoreboard with those names on it, dreaming that maybe someday we'll get to do that. So, and I'll get back to that in just a second. So the following year, 1963, is when Dick Fortner came to Kenmore and completely changed the culture of Kenmore football. We had been a doormat for decades, and he came in and immediately turned around. And I just remember, and it's a very impressionable time for us being a 10-year-olds, all the excitement. And they played good football and were winning games and ended up going to the championship game. But it was just, all the excitement around Kenmore was just magical. So I always really liked watching quarterbacks, and that 63 team quarterback was Sonny Litz. and he wore number 11, and that's why I ended up wearing number 11. I wanted to wear the number that Sonny Litz wore. And then the other quarterbacks I followed after him too were Keith Gross, Don Pasquale, Rick Walters, and Eric Schock. So, I'm very proud of all of those guys. So, growing up, it wasn't just football and baseball. Don and I did everything Kenmore. Went to football games, baseball games, basketball games, wrestling matches. I remember Greg Pegram was a wrestler and just a beast on the mat. But I just remember him just really being a heck of a wrestler. There was no shortage of idols for boys with big dreams. Anywhere you looked, different sports. So I think a recipe for success for any child is having a loving family, supportive friends, caring mentors, teachers, and coaches, a healthy dose of faith, and big dreams. And we had all 5. So we couldn't have had more support than we had, and we certainly had dreams. We had quality coaches at every sport, at every level. Coaches were good people, knowledgeable, and great motivators without exception. I don't ever remember having a coach that I didn't think was a great one. And you talk about preparing you for the future, that's where it happens, is those young coaches. So I told you about looking at the scoreboard for 3 years, at all those guys' names won the state championship. In 1965, we won the state championship again. And so arguably the 2 best teams in the state were in the Kenmore School District. It was Kenmore and Highland Park. We had a game down at Prentice Park. We beat them 1-0 in 9 innings, and there were only a couple hits in the game. I mean, it was a defensive battle, just a war. And I pretty much believe if we hadn't won that game, if they had, there's a good chance they would have been state champs. I mean, the teams were equal, and we just happened to come out that day with a win. We lived and died with Kenmore football, with their wins, broken heart after the losses, as was the whole community. We lost championship games in 63 to Garfield, 65 and 66 to East, and 68 to Garfield. And there was a feeling around the community, what's Kenmore got to do to win a championship? And I don't remember people talking about it, but it was just that kind of hanging over Kenmore. People wanted it so badly. One thing I hadn't shared with too many people, but it probably means more to me than anything that's ever happened in my athletic career. Dick Zavison was the backfield coach at Kenmore, coached quarterbacks and running backs. So 1969 mid-season, we're playing a JV game against East at Kenmore Stadium. And at JVs, you have JV coaches, but it's under the watchful eye of the varsity coaches. Most of your coaching is with other coaches. We're playing East, came to a critical part of the game, and we had a key 3rd down situation. And we had a sprint out pass, was called over to Don's side of the field. And as I was rolling out, I was slowly but surely starting to get toward the line of scrimmage, and East had a linebacker that was scraping for contain doing the same thing. So we're on a head-on collision. At some point, we're going to hit. And so as I'm rolling, I'm looking down the field, just waiting for Don to reach his breaking point and to see him plant to start to make a break. So finally, he got to that point, and I released the ball, and this linebacker just took me apart. I mean, he about ripped my head off. And we both landed on our sideline, and he was on top of me, and we landed at Coach Zavison's feet. And he rolled the defensive player from East over top, rolled him off of me, grabbed me by the jersey and the front of the shoulder pads and jerked me up. Because I didn't weigh but like 135 pounds. Jerked me up and stuck his face right in my face mask. And he said, "Son, that'll win championships for us." And to have that happen at that point in time where Kenmore had not won a championship yet. At the end of that year, we did win. But just with what was going on with the community, to have him say that, I'd have run through a brick wall for the man. And that's what coaches do, is catch your players doing something right and then praise them to the skies to reinforce that action or behavior. So there was nobody better than him. Another thing, going into my junior year, Eric Schock, after the championship, we'd won the championship. Eric's going to graduate. And late July, going into my junior year, Coach Davison called me and said, hey, can you meet me at the stadium at 8 o'clock? I said, all right, yeah. So he didn't say anything more, so I met him at 8 o'clock. And he said, we have a tradition here at Kenmore. He says, when one quarterback graduates and another one is going to take over, kind of the heir apparent to the quarterback position, we have a tradition that quarterback comes up to the stadium and he cleans the locker rooms completely himself. And he said, playing quarterback at Kenmore, he says, you're going to get more recognition than you ever imagined, and a lot of it undeservedly so. So to start you off right, we want your feet on the ground. We want to humble you. The locker room is yours to clean. And he handed me a couple buckets, sponges, a couple cans of Ajax. And it took all day. And so that locker room had been sitting 8 months without any attention. And you know what a toilet looks like after about a month. But the way he presented it, I wasn't grossed out. It was a lot of work, but I was honored. Honored to clean the toilets in this locker room. 69, the first one, then 70. I'm going to talk briefly about this 69. Don's going to talk more about 70. But that game is one of the greatest games in Akron football history because of the way it developed. During that season, Garfield beat Kenmore 34-0 at Kenmore Stadium. And now you're preparing for a rematch against this team that dominated you, and they had 10 all-city players and we had 2. And, what chance did Kenmore have? And I think the thing that really turned the tide psychologically, at one point, maybe 4 or 5 days before the game, Coach Violin and the defensive players called the offensive players into their meeting and said, we want you to watch this. And Coach Violin, he would call out a defensive player and he'd say, okay, and so here's Garfield on film, their offense, and he'd stop it. And by formation only, he'd say, Mike Finnegan, what are they going to do? And he'd say, belly right. And he'd run it, it was belly right. He'd call another defensive player, and the next play, they'd freeze the frame, he'd say belly left. Run the play, it's belly left. And this went on for like 2 or 3 minutes. Every play, by their alignment, we knew what they were going to do. They were cheating and giving away their plays. But I remember leaving that meeting thinking, we got a chance here. We may win this game. But I don't know that everybody really believed, especially offensive players, until they saw the potential of what our defense could do. Garfield beat us by 34 the first game, and we held them to 12 in the championship game. So that's a wonderful memory. Moving forward to our senior year, we opened up with Hoban at Hoban. And Hoban had a good football team, but it was just one of those nights. We couldn't do anything wrong. Everything we did just worked perfectly. And I remember one point late in the game, we had a 3rd and goal on like the 12 or 15-yard line, and the coaches called a turkey route, which they called it a turkey route because Don's route looked like a turkey leg. And what it amounted to is you run a post, then corner, and break it off and come back. So he called that, and before the snap, I looked over, and there were a couple defenders out there. And so the ball was snapped, and, Don goes down, makes a nice break, a sharp break to the post, and he did a great job selling his routes. break, and looked back, and I pumped it, and he broke to the corner, and I pumped it again, and he reached his point and broke it off for the comeback, and caught a touchdown at the pylon, and I don't think there was a defender anywhere near him. And it's just, Don pretty much had his way with a lot of defensive backs just because he knew how to play the position. Great routes, never dropped a pass, but he turned a couple guys around out there and was still wide open. One game that I remember gave him fits. We were playing Central Howard mid-season, our senior year, and they had a little corner. It wasn't very big, but it was quick as a cat. And Don had a bear of a time shaking this kid. I mean, everywhere Don went, this kid was right there. And we ended up having a nice win. We won comfortably, but this kid was a pain in the ass for Don. I mean, Don was talking about it, and it really bothered him. And he's kind of figuring, okay, what happened? What can I do? And so maybe a month later, we played Central Howard in the playoffs again. So Don gets to face the kid. We beat him 28-6. Don scored all 28 points. All right, moving on to NC State. Oh, speak up? Okay. Moving on to NC State. I'll never forget our first day on campus. We checked into the dorm, getting ready for 2-a-day practices. And the whole freshman class, so everybody in our class, they took us over to a dentist office to be fitted for mouthpieces. So, at Kenmore, everybody's just like you. Everybody grew up in the same community, same background. You go to college, there's kids from everywhere. We had kids from Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, to Florida, and every state in between. So we're all sitting around the dentist's office, and this is our first chance to get to know our future teammates. And kid Greg Walker from Hudson, North Carolina, up in the mountains, he looked at me and he said, "How do you pronounce B-E-A-R?" And I said, "Bear." And he said, "Bear's an aspirin." He said, it's bear." And then this kid, Steve Hand from Waycross, Georgia, speaks up and he goes, "No, that's bar." And Greg Walker says, "What are you, Daniel Boone or something?" But that's kind of how it starts, getting to know the guys from different areas, different accents. And one thing, Akron, I didn't know any better. I mean, pop is pop. You go to Raleigh, North Carolina and say pop, they laugh you out of the place. They killed me over saying pop. And I'll bet you I may not have said pop after the first month I was there. I think they cured me of that in 4 weeks. Lou Holtz, coach at NC State, I believe is the best motivator in the business. I haven't seen anybody do this then or since. He believed in playing 2 offenses. He would prepare 2 offenses, and he would tell the second offense, third series of the game, you're going in. Or fourth series of the game, you're going in. And then throughout the game, he'd grab and say, okay, go back in there. But, you really had to be prepared because you never knew when you were going to go into the game. One year we were playing our rival, North Carolina, and he had told the second offense, 4th possession, you're going in. So North Carolina had the ball, driving, got down to our 1-yard line and fumbled, and we recovered. So we take over on our 1-yard line, and it was the 4th possession. And all the second offense is standing on the sideline kind of looking at each other like, surely you don't want us to go in now with the ball on our own 1-yard line. And he looked at everybody and he said, "Second offense, get the hell in there." He said, "I told you you're going in." So everybody, second offense went in. And we drove 99 yards for a touchdown. But, it's hard not to believe in yourself when the coach believes in you that much. Where he's going to put you in the worst situation, you better believe in yourself. So I admire him for that. We had played Penn State every year. NC State had lost like 6 consecutive games to Penn State before Coach Holtz got there. 72, they nailed us pretty good. 73, we had a shot at them. They beat us 35-29, and we had a shot and just didn't get it done. But the thing I remember about that game, 1973 was our sophomore year. Penn State, we played them 10th game of the season. They had not given up 100 yards rushing to any opponent, had not given up a rushing touchdown to anybody all year. And getting ready for that game, Coach Holt said, we had a real good offensive line and 4 really good running backs. Coach Holt said, we're going to start off the game, take the opening kickoff, and he says, we're going to jam the ball down their throats. We're not going to pass the ball the first possession. He said, we're going to jam it down their throats. They haven't seen a running game like we've got. And, for somebody to say that against one of the best defenses in the country, and we took the opening possession, no passes, jammed it down their throats and scored. We ended up losing 35-29, but we rushed for 250 yards and had 4 rushing touchdowns. But, Coach Holtz could make you believe you could run through a brick wall. He believed in us, and he expected us to believe in ourselves. Our junior year, we were getting ready to play Penn State the first time in Raleigh. So we had played South Carolina the week before and had a nice win. And in the locker room after South Carolina, Coach Holt said, great win, enjoy the win, relax. But once we come back for film sessions and meetings tomorrow, I want all our focus. You know who's coming to town next weekend, the Nittany Lions. And he said, so, come tomorrow when we start meeting, I want every guy in here to get yourself ready to play the best football game you've ever played in your life. He said, don't worry about the guy in front of you. Don't worry about the guy behind you, beside you. You play the best game you can possibly play. And he says, I'll guarantee you next Saturday I will outcoach Joe Paterno. And for him, Lou Holtz was just making a name for himself. Back then already, Joe Paterno was a legend. He was a perennial top 10 team. And for Holtz to say, I'll guarantee you I will outcoach Joe Paterno, there was no doubt. Everybody believed it, and we beat them. And I believe we won that game in the locker room after the South Carolina game. That he planted the seed, and we were ready. It so happened that game was on our birthday. We had a message board that scrolled under the scoreboard, and right at the end of the game, the message said, happy birthday, Buckey Twins. So after the game, Coach Paterno met us at midfield, shook our hands and kind of grinned, and he said, happy birthday. I thought that was nice. Next year we went up to Penn State. We had never beat them up there. And so we ended up beating them up there, but the key of the game, we had about 4 or 5 times in key third downs that they called a play that Don did very well at. And we had hit it throughout the game like 4 times for first downs. And late in the game, a time where they needed to get the ball back and we needed to get a first down to keep moving the chains, they called the play again. And we had it on like the 15-yard line and hit it for a first down out to about the 25. And their secondary coach on their sideline screamed out to his defensive back. He says, Tommy, you've got to stop him. And the kid threw his hands up and he says, I can't. And you tell me there's not a better compliment to a player than have a guy from Penn State say, I can't stop him. And, we hung on and won the game. It was close. But there was a coach for Penn State, Booker Brooks was a position coach. He lightly recruited us in high school. He stopped by, talked to us a little bit, looked at some film, but he was very upfront and honest, and we appreciate that. He said, I like you guys, but Dave, I don't believe your arm is strong enough to play at Penn State. And he said, Don, I don't think you're quite fast enough to play at Penn State. He said, I like you guys. I wish it could work out, but that's my feeling. And we appreciate it. We said thank you and good luck. And so after that win up there at midfield, Booker Brooks came over, shook our hands, kind of grinned, and he said, I was wrong. So, and again, there's no better compliment to that, but from somebody from Penn State saying that. But anyway, I've taken more time than I have. I was supposed to leave time for Don. I hope I have, but I'm honored to be here. Once a Cardinal, always a Cardinal. We should always be proud to carry that moniker. Thank you for having me. Well, we did talk to each other before we came to do this, so we're not going to have much of an overlap in what we talk about. In a couple of cases, we might have just a slight overlap, but we tried to spare you that. So thanks so much for having us. When Dave and I were talking before we came, said, what do you think? How many people are going to show up for this thing? You got 5 or 6 people, or 10 or 15? So this is overwhelming. I thank you so much for joining us today. It's our pleasure to be here, I can assure you that. But thank you. It's important to us. Apparently it's important to you, so thank you. By the time Dave and I came along as the last 2 of 5 siblings, many of the foundations that would greatly affect our lives personally and in athletics had already been laid. We weren't having to build anything from scratch. Personally, our parents and siblings had laid a foundation of faith. We were raised on biblical and teamwork concepts of kindness, gratitude, discipline, humility, coachability. We had the constant, undying support of our parents and family, and that still is the case today. We've got family here today. Our oldest brother Jim, sister Carolyn, and Jim's family are here to support us, and that has never changed from the time we were little kids. So thanks for joining us today. But what you mean to us and what you meant to us growing up, words cannot express it. So thank you. One or usually both of our parents attended every athletic event we ever participated until we played in a college all-star game in Tokyo, Japan. So that's a pretty good record. Athletically, we had great coaching, even in Little League Baseball and Pee Wee football. Several guys who had experience in college, semi-pro, and even pro ball. High standards and expectations had already been set, and we had excellent personal examples to follow by the time we were just 9 and 10 years old. The high school sports and players were like the pros to us. When Coach Fortner came along in 1963, we were 10 years old. With the seemingly unexpected and sudden football success, we young fans were absolutely in heaven. I'd like to take 30 to 40 seconds to mention some former players because they're important to us, and I think it's important that they be remembered. They laid the foundation. They were the pioneers for what became a nice run at Kenmore. But guys like Sonny Litz, Dave mentioned, Herman Smith, Mick Nazarella, Tom Hederle, John Joniak, Pete Peterson, John Swires, John Denholm, Bruce Bassett, Nick Demoff, Mike Chambers, Don Plasqualik, Keith Gross, Ron Miller, Russ Heben, Karloff Hill, Ron Donnelly, the Rectors, the Benns, contemporaries like Gary Pinkel and Eric Schock, and many others who participated in other sports as well. They were our heroes. In elementary school, before the games, we'd wait at the intersection of 13th Street and Iona Avenue, just up the street from where we grew up. We'd wait for the band to march up to the stadium. We could hear the band coming from blocks away at the school, and the anticipation would build as they got closer and closer to us. When they passed, the fans would fall in behind the band and follow them up to the stadium. Do we have any former band members in here? Okay. I can still hear the cadence in my mind between fight songs and stuff, what the band would play. And then at the stadium, we used to line up outside the locker room before the games, waiting to hear the door bang open, followed by the players running out to touch the rock and take the field. We couldn't wait to jump up and touch the players' shoulder pads and encourage them with, "Go Ron, go Mick, go Russ." After the games, we would race home, put on our own football uniforms, run or bike back up to the stadium, and play our own games. We would practice announcing ourselves in the starting lineups like they did over the PA system at the stadium. Starting at quarterback, number 11, Bucky, Dave Bucky. And I think every little kid does stuff like that. Teenagers and athletes should never underestimate the impression upon and responsibility they have to our youth. Little eyes are always watching. We taped our fingers because Ron Williams did it when he jammed his fingers. We walked pigeon-toed because Nick Dimoff walked pigeon-toed. Fast forward 6 to 8 years, when finally playing at Kenmore, what a feeling it was to be warming up on the field before the games and hear the band faintly playing off in the distance, marching up 13th Street, getting louder and closer, and knowing what it was like for the youngsters and families in the Kenmore community who were following them up to the stadium. With an enrollment of only 1,200, presumably 600 young men, it's amazing to think we had 200 guys try out for the football team. We dressed 100 for every game, and we 2 platoons, so nobody played both ways, and it gave more players a chance to play. I've never seen or heard anything like that before or since then, for a high school to have that many kids come out and play and dress. And some of you will remember the Vulture Squad. We didn't have enough uniforms for all the guys who wanted to try out, so we had a group of 25 to 35 guys who had to come to the meetings and practices waiting for someone to quit or get hurt in order for them to swoop down like a vulture and get a uniform so they could practice and hopefully play. One favorite and lasting Kenmore football memory is the fiery speech Coach Violin gave us a night or two before the 1970 championship game. We had already upset Garfield the year before in the '69 championship, and he was getting us mentally prepared for the second consecutive championship. His story was Big John's coming, and I assume some of you guys that were there will remember that. So I'm not, in the interest of time, I won't tell you the whole story. But at the end, the punchline was, if they thought last year's championship was something, they ain't seen nothing yet. He then turned and kicked a metal trash can through a window in the health room. We were ready to play right then, and we went on to win the '70 championship 42-20. One of the keys to that game turned out to be the weather and the frozen turf. We went to Miracle Mart and bought tennis shoes, which gave us better traction than our football cleats did. We scored 6 touchdowns that day, ranging from 35 to 80 yards. While we were scoring long touchdowns, Garfield was slipping, sliding, and skating all over the field. We continue to age, and our memories continue to fade. But our memories of growing up in Akron and Kenmore are still fresh and vivid in our minds. We wouldn't trade growing up in Kenmore for anything. It will always be home to us. Our roots are here, but our wings eventually took us to other places. We always look forward to coming back to visit family and friends and go to the B&K root beer stand, Belgrade's in Barberton, Mary Coyle's ice cream, and until they stop making them, cream sticks at Krispy Kreme. My wife Elaine and a former NC State cheerleader, and Elaine's right down here, and the best cheerleader they've ever had, by the way. Elaine loves attending our high school reunions. Religiously, every 5 years, the class of '72 has had a reunion, and she loves it. She refers to Kenmore as High School USA. People sometimes ask me about the best catch I ever made. Right there.
Good answer.
Yeah. Any success we enjoyed was largely as a result of the coaches and teammates we played with. We played on teams that won championships at every amateur level in multiple sports. 2 championships in Pee Wees, league and state championships in Little League and teenage baseball, 2 football championships at Kenmore, a conference championship, and 4 bowl games at NC State, back when there were only 11 or 12 bowl games, not like over 40 today. And an opportunity to play in a few all-star games after high school and college, including trips to Hawaii and Tokyo that Dave mentioned. With team success sometimes comes individual opportunity. We were very fortunate to have a chance to further our educations and athletic careers after high school. I'm so grateful for the opportunities Dave and I have gotten, but I'm sad for our teammates who deserve but never had that opportunity. There is no doubt in our minds that more of our high school teammates could have succeeded at the next level if given the opportunity. The recruiting experience was fun and exciting. When Coach Fortner told us there would be an opportunity for college football scholarships, we decided that we wanted to only speak with schools that were interested in both of us. So if anyone came in talking to Coach Fortner about one of us, we never even knew about it. We probably met with coaches from 8 or 10 schools, but for us it boiled down to NC State with Lou Holtz, Kent State with Don James, who was building a very nice program back there at Kent, and the Naval Academy. Our dad was pretty enamored with the idea of his boys going to the U.S. Naval Academy for a while. We ate at some wonderful restaurants, visited a few college campuses, and even got to fly on an airplane for the first time for our visit to NC State in Raleigh. Prior to being recruited by them, the first Dave and I had ever heard of NC State was when the Beacon Journal had written an article about Kent State playing them in 1970 or 71. We both were talking, and reading an article, we both thought the Wolfpack mascot name was very unique and very cool. We said, that Wolfpack, that sounds pretty cool. On the NC State flight, picture this, much like today, it was in the middle of winter, we're bundled up in Cleveland in January or February, and we got off the plane in Raleigh in shirt sleeve weather. We remembered that was pretty nice, to leave weather like this and have weather like they have in the Carolinas this time of year. We got to see an ACC basketball game between NC State and Maryland in a sold-out and wild crowd at the old barn called Reynolds Coliseum that came down to the last shot. Once coaches Bo Ryan and Lou Holtz of NC State came into the picture, along with an offense that was very well suited for us, that was very similar to what we ran at Kenmore, we were sold on the Wolfpack. Bo Ryan, the quarterback and running backs coach, was our initial contact. Coach Ryan was a two-sport athlete at Ohio State, played baseball and football, and in his later years he enjoyed telling people that his football jersey number was retired at Ohio State. Never mind the detail that it was retired because Archie Griffin wore it, not because Bo Ryan wore it. Coach Holtz came to kind of tie up loose ends and kind of close the deal, so to speak. So Coach Holtz came to our house for a home visit. Coaches not only recruit the athletes, they recruit the families, the parents too. So when Coach Holtz got there, we talked, we watched some film. He wanted us to see the offense that we would be running. We talked some more. We decided to take a break to the dining room for some pie and coffee. So we're sitting there eating our pie and drinking our coffee and soft drinks. And Coach Holtz says to my mom, he says, "Mrs. Buckey, I think this is the best apple pie I have ever had in my life. Would you mind if I have another piece?" So my mom cut him another piece. We finished the evening. When Coach Holtz left, my dad kind of sat us all down. He said, "Okay, let's talk about the evening. What do you think?" And my mom said, "I like him." He liked her pie and she liked him. So baseball coach Lefty Gray, who I know a lot of you know, when he found out we were going south and going to NC State, here's a quote that I'll never forget. He said, "Comparing girls to farm animals, most everywhere you go, you'll find some really nice-looking cattle. However, when you go down south, they got them heifers," with a smile and a wink. So my wife Elaine can be proud to know that she's one of those heifers that Lefty Gray was talking about. On one hand, those recruiting, high school all-star games, and first practices at NC State were exciting and ultimately very rewarding. They were also a little scary. It's at those points, the couple times, that we began to kind of question, can we make it? Are we good enough? Was our high school competition at a high level? What if we fail? Fortunately, it didn't take very long to find that we had played against very good high school competition with great coaching and great teammates around us, and we were well prepared and finally began to believe, it looks like we might be able to do this. In hindsight, it certainly looks and feels like we were often in the right place at the right time. We've certainly been blessed and even charmed at times. We continue to be very humbled by and grateful for those experiences. One of our dad's favorite sayings was, "Our cups runneth over." We started out in college. The first-year freshmen became eligible for varsity competition in 1972. Our goal in 1972 as freshmen at NC State was to make the traveling squad. That is, to dress and travel to home and away games just to be on the field. That was our hope and dream. As the season unfolded, we got to play earlier and more than expected or even hoped for as Dave alluded to. The second offense probably got to play maybe 30% of the time, which is kind of unusual. So being twins, Sports Illustrated felt ours was a unique story and decided to put us on its cover in late October that year for its story on freshmen becoming eligible for varsity competition for the first time. So think about this. How risky could it have possibly been to upset the important and fragile team chemistry to have a couple freshmen who weren't even starters on the cover of Sports Illustrated? Coach Holtz handled it perfectly. As he often did before practice, he got the team together in the locker room with some last-minute instructions, what we're hoping to accomplish that day. So he addressed the team the day that Sports Illustrated story came out. He said, guys, he said, every Thursday morning I go to the student supply store and I get my Sports Illustrated. And he said, I went this morning, and he said, they weren't there yet, and I asked the clerk, have they not delivered the Sports Illustrated yet? And the clerk said, yeah, they came in this morning. He said a young guy came in and bought about half of them, and about 5 or 10 minutes later, another young guy came in, looked just like him, bought the other half. So the team had a good laugh at our expense, and we went on to have our normal practice from there. That was really all that was said about it, but it was a perfect way to break the ice, to address it, but move on beyond that. So I want to take just a moment to tell you about Coach Holtz. Extremely intelligent, funny, intense, organized, tough. He knew what it took to win and wouldn't settle for anything less. His practice schedule was broken into 10, 15, and 20-minute segments. If we got to the end of a segment and he wasn't getting the look that he wanted, he would turn his watch back and start the segment over. After doing that several times, a 2-hour practice could easily turn into 2.5 or 3 hours. But he wasn't going to leave the practice field until he got what he wanted. He was a Woody Hayes disciple, great teacher and motivator, fantastic speaker. He was a football coach, but he was also a teacher of life. He had an uncanny ability to walk the fine line between correcting and even tearing you down if he felt like it was necessary, but also building you up and making you believe he wouldn't trade you for anyone in America. Coach Holtz could make us believe we could do things and beat teams we had no business doing and beating. Like at Kenmore, we ran an offensive scheme that allowed us to beat teams that were physically bigger and stronger than we were. He made us believe no one could stop us and that no one could beat us. Football is a serious game, but there are funny things that happen from time to time. Unlike today, when teams often use big signs and hand signal plays in from the sideline, we used to run plays in from the sideline like we did at Kenmore, typically with the linemen or receivers. Every once in a while, our guy would get to the huddle, our lineman or receiver who was coming in with the play from the sideline, get to the huddle with the clock running and Dave and the other players in the huddle anxiously awaiting to hear the play call. With a blank stare on his face, the player would say, I forgot. That happened more than you can imagine. The guy was so pumped up about what he was going to do and focusing on what he was going to do and forgot the play call. So anyway, Dave would then, in a case like that, have to quickly grab something out of his bag of tricks and call his own play. Coach Holtz was his own offensive coordinator and called his own plays, but he would rely on quick and current information from a couple of our coaches in the press box, like down and distance, and once in a while a recommended play if the coach felt it was very confident that it would work. In the 1973 Liberty Bowl, we had just run a third down play inside the 10-yard line. Coach Ryan in the press box said to Coach Holtz, it's 4th down and a foot, run 32. Coach Holtz grabbed a receiver on the sideline, gave him the play, ran him into the huddle. When the huddle broke, Coach Holtz saw the sideline yard markers, and he started running down the sideline trying to call a timeout. It wasn't 4th and a foot, it was 4th and 3 yards to go. Coach Ryan had lied to him. The ball was snapped and we ran the play for a touchdown. Coach Ryan knew that if Coach Holtz realized it was 4th and 3, he would have kicked a field goal. But Coach Ryan was very confident that the play would at least get a first down. Coach Holtz wasn't very happy, but afterwards he could laugh about it, saying to Coach Ryan, Bo, it's a good thing that worked or I'd have fired your ass. Okay. To the
It was a timeout.
Okay, that was a timeout. To the victors go the spoils. To this day, Coach Holtz's and our 4-year one-loss record at NC State is still the winningest 4-year period in Wolfpack football history. With a top 10 finish in 1974, 4 bowl games and a conference championship, playing Penn State every year was a highlight, especially beating them twice and nearly a third time the year John Cappelletti won the Heisman Trophy in 1973. And beating Penn State was no fluke. When we were at NC State, we had 5 running backs and 3 offensive linemen who played pro football. And we had a great young linebacker by the name of Bill Cower, who is probably a familiar name to you, went on and coached the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention a few people. Mike Nall went from Kenmore to NC State a few years after we did and had a wonderful career as a starting safety. It was great to have him there, and we could enjoy his success with him. He was another one of those, quote, undersized Kenmore kids who had a heart like a lion, and he was very simply a great football player. Kathy Justin Buckey was one of the great Kenmore cheerleaders in the early 70s. She went on to build and coach the NC State cheerleaders into one of the best perennial competitive cheerleading squads in the country. We used to jokingly and respectfully refer to Kathy as the Bobby Knight of college cheerleading. She and her squads were tough and highly successful, with winning multiple national championships. Dave Miller, thought of by many as Mr. Kenmore, was a friend and schoolmate from the time we were in elementary school. Dave Miller was a huge Kenmore sports fan like we were. We started the DDD Journal, which stood for Dave, Don, and Dave. We would type Kenmore post-game articles on our typewriters like we were writing for the Beacon Journal. At the risk of forever changing the way you think of us, I've got to share a story with you. We used to play basketball in Dave Miller's basement. So Ron Williams, we noticed, I mentioned him earlier, when he taped his fingers, we taped our fingers. Well, he wore knee pads. So we thought that was kind of cool, so we're going to wear knee pads. So we're looking through the house saying, where are we going to find knee pads? Well, lo and behold, I found my mom had a box of Kotex knee pads in the bathroom. So we grabbed several of those, took them down to Dave Miller's house, got all dressed, and those things weren't very stretchy, so we used safety pins to secure them around our knees. So we're down there in his basement playing with Kotex knee pads, and his mom comes walking down and sees us, and she says, very calmly, she says, "What is that you have on your knees?" And we said, "Knee pads." And she said, "Where did you get them?" We said, "My mom had a whole box of them in the bathroom." And she said, "Does your mom know you're wearing those?" And we said, "Oh, yeah." So she called my mom, and they had a great laugh over us wearing those knee pads. And I have to mention the Kenmore girls, the cheerleaders, team backers, and fans. We greatly enjoyed and appreciated the decorated lockers and signs in our yard. A lot of women don't like or understand sports. However, Kenmore girls know football, and Kenmore girls know sports in general. I also need to mention a few things about my quarterback. He was my roommate not only for 4 years at NC State, but also for the 18 years before that. He didn't have to take a backseat to any quarterback I've ever seen or known. He'll be quick to give the credit to Coach Zavison, and Coach Zavison certainly deserves a lot of credit. And Coach Zavison had a series of great all-conference quarterbacks at Kenmore for over a decade. In my humble opinion, and I don't intend to slight anyone, Dave is the best of the best. He's the best I've ever seen at throwing on the run to the right or to the left, which is most difficult for right-handed quarterbacks. Highly accurate, great decision maker, cool, calm, and collected under pressure. He would stand in the pocket and take a hit. One appropriate word would be courageous. What he did sometimes was courageous and took some hits that I didn't expect to see him get up from. He was an all-conference quarterback in high school and in college, and was inducted into the Atlantic Coast Conference Legends class of 2013. What you may not know is that he was a preseason Heisman Trophy candidate in 1975. He held virtually all of NC State's passing records when he graduated, including the quarterback rating record that he held for nearly 30 years until it was finally broken by Phillip Rivers, who went on to play in the NFL for nearly 20 years. So let me take a moment to tell you what it's like to be the brother of the star quarterback. After about our junior year in college, I started jokingly and affectionately referring to myself as the other Bucky. When Elaine and I started dating, people would ask her, "Are you dating Dave or the other one?" After we got married, people would ask her, "Did you marry the quarterback or the other one?" So in 1974, we played in Houston, Texas, in the Houston Bluebonnet Bowl. There was an article by a local writer, and he was doing an article on the game and the teams that were in town. And in that article, he talked about NC State's quarterback, Dave Buckey, and his twin brother, Bill. He couldn't even get my name right. Okay, now the last part, and this is all absolutely true. In high school, I kicked extra points and field goals, and Dave was the holder and did a great job as a holder. So he did that at NC State for 3 years and did a great job of it. Going into our senior year, our coaches started thinking, we've got a quarterback here that is a key position for any team. But they thought, if somebody wanted to try to take him out, to take a cheap shot and put him out of the game, he's a sitting duck back there holding for extra points and field goals. They could easily cheap shot him and get him out of the game. So he said, well, so what should we do? What are we going to do about this? So they decided to let me do it. So I've had a lot of fun with that and gotten a lot of mileage out of it over the years. And when Dave hears me go into the other Bucky routine, he just shakes his head like he is now and just smiles. It's absolutely true. We did have the experience of playing in the NFL for the New York Jets, albeit not as long-lasting as we had dreamed of. At any rate, it made for some wonderful memories. It was the last year Joe Namath was in New York, so we got to meet, spend time with, and play with him. I can tell you that Dave was doing very well in training camp until he suffered what is now referred to as a high ankle sprain. Those things can linger for a long time, but that was in a scrimmage against the New York Giants, so it was something that he just didn't have time to overcome. I was fortunate to realize a childhood dream of playing in Cleveland Stadium. As fate would have it, after making the New York Jets roster in 1976, our opening game was in Cleveland Stadium. I got to play in front of family and some friends, catching a couple passes and holding for extra points and field goals. I just didn't expect to be dressing in the visitors' locker room and playing for the other team. I mentioned our having great coaching, how important that is. Certainly you can't win without talent, but you can lose when you have talent without great coaching. It was coaching that shocked Garfield and the Akron world when we beat Garfield in 1969. Dave mentioned the defensive coaches, the tendencies that we identified, so our defense knew what Garfield's offense was going to do. Similarly, our offensive coaches saw something that we could exploit in Garfield's defensive alignment. On Eric Schock's long touchdown run, we caught them in one of their defensive alignments where they left themselves exposed, and we were able to capitalize on it. Bang, a long touchdown on a quarterback sneak. But that was scouting, that was coaching. After beating Penn State in Raleigh in 1974, we beat them again at Penn State in 1975. After being down 14-0 at the half, we came back and beat them 15-14. As it turned out, one of the key plays late in the game, after we had taken the lead with only a minute or two left in the game, was a 78-yard quick kick from our 10-yard line to the other 12-yard line. For those who may not know, a quick kick is a surprise punt on third down when the opponent doesn't expect it and they don't have someone back to return the punt. In a low-scoring game, field position is very important. That quick kick totally flipped the field. What no one else could have known, we practiced that quick kick every Thursday for 4 years before finally using it in our next to the last game of Coach Holtz's and our 4th season. Success is said to be found at the intersection of opportunity and preparedness, and sometimes with a lot of patience. It's important that though we're aging and dying ourselves, we continue to get together to remember and celebrate, to tell the Kenmore High School story. A time will come when there will be no more alumni to share the memories and stories. This is a sad thought, and that will be a sad day. I can't thank you enough for putting this on your calendar and coming by. We all share a special common bond that may never be broken. in closing, as soon as you see where I'm going with this, I'd be glad to have y'all chime in and finish it with me. Kenmore High School, Kenmore High School, hail to thee, Kenmore High alma mater. O Kenmore High forever, our alma mater dear, we praise thee, fairest high school. Thy name we love to hear. Our team leads us to victory. We cheer the score along. O Kenmore High, the best school. We praise thee in song. I think I can safely say all of our cups truly runneth over, as our dad used to remind us. With that, if anybody has any questions, we'd be glad to stay around and answer them. But it's been our pleasure to be here, believe me. Coach.